And Australia's diplomats have been evacuated from Iran and our embassy in Tehran shut down and the ambassador from Iran expelled from Australia after ASIO revealed that Iran is responsible for at least 2 anti-Semitic attacks on our shores, including the firebombing of the Adass synagogue and a kosher food supplier in Sydney. Here's the ASIO boss and the Prime Minister.
ASIO now assesses the Iranian government directed at least 2 and likely more attacks on Jewish interests in Australia. Our painstaking investigation uncovered and unpicked the links between the alleged crimes and the commanders in Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC.
These were extraordinary and dangerous acts of aggression orchestrated by a foreign nation on Australian soil.
Let's go again to Alex Ryvchin from the Executive Council of Australian Jewry. Good to talk to you again, Alex, in terrible circumstances. Tell us the reaction to, you've experienced so much of this hatred over the past almost 2 years, but now the confirmation that some of it at least has been directed from Iran.
There's not a great deal of shock that Iran was behind this. We recall that at the beginning of the investigations, the police alluded to their investigations pointing to a foreign actor. And the minute they said that, I think most people assumed that Iran was the #1 suspect. This is a regime through its IRGC, which wreaks havoc throughout the world. It's carried out terrorist attacks devastating Jewish communities, Israeli targets, and Western targets in many continents. So there's no surprise here. But at the same time, when you receive this confirmation that it was indeed the Iranian regime, that via the mullahs and then the IRGC and then their various operatives and networks and cells throughout the world, they actually identified the Australian Jewish community, selected targets and hit them in this way, it's a chilling thing to learn. And it obviously raises a lot of questions in terms of, are there operatives still at large? How many people were involved? How did they get to Australia? All of these things. And particularly, is there an ongoing threat to the community? I mean, I spoke earlier to the owners of the business that was targeted in Sydney. They're beside themselves. You know, knowing that they were targeted in this way by such a devastating, deadly foe, it's a terrifying thing to learn of.
It's absolutely terrifying, but I just want to ask, is there any sense in which there is any comfort that perhaps that's the homegrown anti-Semitic hatred might not be as severe that is being directed from these sinister overseas forces?
Well, what we're learning so far is that this was a complex network involving, obviously, the Iranian regime. We've seen the role played by organised crime and then local operatives as well. And so it doesn't diminish the extent of anti-Semitism. I think the lesson here is actually the reverse. I think it shows how determined, how sophisticated, how deadly these forces of anti-Semitism are and the lengths they'll go to menace and terrorise our community.
At the same time, we're having protests where people are openly chanting for intifada. They're regularly chanting from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. They're even marching with flags from terrorist groups and a poster of the supreme leader of Iran. Does this not just underscore that our police and governments, our authorities, have been too soft on the hateful messages brandished about at these protests?
Well, I can only hope that the police and security agencies are very carefully monitoring all of these rallies, identifying people that are sympathetic to prescribed organisations and terrorist regimes, and taking action to protect us, because these rallies we've seen are a gathering point for all manner of extremists. They bring a very deadly ideology. They radicalise people who come along. You've seen kids being encouraged to chant for an intifada and all of these things. So action clearly needs to be taken. But I think there's also a moment here where those who attend these marches, and we've seen tens of thousands attending in Sydney and in various other cities throughout the country, where they need to pause and reflect what side they're on and whether they're on the right side of history. They think they are. But if you're marching next to people holding posters of Sinwar and Nasrallah and the Ayatollah, knowing now that that regime has carried out attacks on Australian soil, I think you need to seriously question your morality and which side you've chosen to be on.
Given the dynamic that's played out in this country over the past 20-odd months, and also given the dynamic that's played out since the Sydney Harbour Bridge protest, do you believe that the Albanese Labor government's decision and pledge to recognise this non-existent state of Palestine, do you believe that that would have been a desired outcome from Iran's interventions in Australia?
There's no question that whatever the intent of the Australian government, and I take them at their word that they're seeking to advance peace and end the conflict and have Israel and a Palestinian state living side by side. Whatever that intent may be, the outcome is very different. They have handed a huge victory to the most extreme forces in Australia and around the world, and they will view that as a validation and a vindication of their efforts, and they're going to escalate them. It's been shown to them that if you take over our streets, if you target the Jewish community, if you carry out acts of mass horror, as we saw on October 7th, you will receive political outcomes that you're seeking. That is the entirely wrong message to send, and it's made our country and the world a more dangerous place.
Thanks for joining us, Alex. Appreciate it as ever.
Well.
Alex Ryvchin there from the Executive Council of Australian Jewry.